Ethan just wanted to finish his last delivery and pick up his 6-year-old son. But when he stepped into the grand hall of billionaire Eleanor Hart's mansion, he froze. Then panic set in. Among the gleaming marble and crystal chandeliers, a portrait stood illuminated under its own spotlight. Anna, his wife. Dead 3 years, except the nameplate beneath the frame didn't say Anna. It was a name Ethan had never heard before. Why did Eleanor have his wife's photograph? And why had his wife lived her entire life under a false name? The package in Ethan's hands felt heavier than it should. He stood in the entrance hall of the Hart mansion, staring at the portrait on the wall. His delivery bag slipped from his shoulder and hit the marble floor with a dull thud. It was Anna. Not a woman who looked like Anna. Not someone with similar features. It was her. The curve of her smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners, even the small birthmark on her left cheek. Every detail matched the woman he had married 8 years ago, the woman he had buried 3 years ago. But the brass nameplate beneath the gilded frame read, Evelyn Hart, beloved sister. Ethan's throat closed. His vision blurred at the edges. He took a step closer, then another, until he stood directly beneath the portrait. The woman in the painting wore an elegant navy dress. Her hair was styled in soft waves. She looked younger, maybe early 20s, but it was undeniably her. A door opened somewhere to his left. Footsteps approached across the polished floor. "Can I help you?" Ethan turned. A woman in a dark suit stood watching him. She was older than the woman in the portrait, maybe late 40s. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes had sharpened when they landed on his face. "I'm sorry," Ethan managed. His voice came out rough. "I'm here to deliver a package, but this photo..." The woman's face went white. She took 3 quick steps backward. "Who are you?" she demanded. Her composure had cracked. She looked between Ethan and the portrait, her breath coming faster. "My name is Ethan Cole. I'm just a delivery driver. But that woman in the painting..." He pointed at the portrait with a shaking hand. "That's my wife." The woman stared at him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then she turned sharply and called out, "Marcus!" A man in a security uniform appeared from a side hallway. He was broad-shouldered and expressionless. "Escort this man out," the woman said. Her voice had turned cold. "Immediately!" "Wait," Ethan started, but Marcus was already moving toward him. "Ma'am, I'm not trying to cause trouble," Ethan said quickly. "I just need to understand why you have a painting of my wife in your house. Her name was Anna. Anna Cole. She died 3 years ago in a car accident. But that's her. I know it is." The woman's face had gone from white to gray. She gripped the back of a nearby chair. "Get him out," she repeated, but her voice wavered. Marcus took Ethan's arm, not roughly, but firmly. Ethan allowed himself to be guided toward the door. His mind was spinning. Nothing made sense. Anna had never mentioned any connection to wealth. She had never talked about her family at all. When he had asked, she always changed the subject with a sad smile and said her past didn't matter. Only their future did. He was halfway to the door when he heard it. "Wait." Marcus stopped. Ethan turned. The woman had followed them. She was trembling. "You said..." Her voice broke. She swallowed hard and tried again. "You said she was your wife?" Ethan nodded slowly. "And she's..." The woman couldn't finish the sentence. "Dead," Ethan said quietly. "Yes. 3 years ago. A drunk driver ran a red light. She died on impact." The woman's knees buckled. She caught herself on the wall. Marcus moved toward her, but she waved him off. "Is she alive?" the woman whispered. Her eyes were desperate. "Please. Is Evelyn alive?" "I don't know anyone named Evelyn," Ethan said. "My wife's name was Anna." The woman shook her head. Tears spilled down her cheeks. No, that's..." She looked up at the portrait, then back at Ethan. "That's my sister. Evelyn Hart. She disappeared 13 years ago. I've been searching for her ever since. I hired investigators. I checked hospitals, shelters, everywhere. But there was nothing. No trace. It was like she vanished into thin air." Ethan felt the floor tilt beneath him. He reached out and steadied himself against the doorframe. "That can't be right," he said. But even as he spoke, he knew it could be. Anna had no family photos, no childhood stories, no old friends. She had appeared in his life like someone who had just been born the day they met. He had thought she was simply private, maybe running from a bad past. He had never pushed her to explain. The woman took a shaking breath and seemed to pull herself together. She straightened and wiped her eyes. "My name is Eleanor Hart," she said. "That portrait is of my younger sister." She would be 35 now. The painting was done when she was 22, right before she disappeared. 35. Anna had been 32 when she died. The timeline matched. "I don't understand," Ethan said. His voice sounded hollow in his own ears. "Why would she change her name? Why would she leave?" Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. Then she glanced at Marcus. "You can go," she told him quietly. Marcus hesitated, then nodded and walked away down the hall. Eleanor turned back to Ethan. "Come with me," she said. She led him through a series of corridors into a smaller sitting room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a garden. Eleanor gestured to a leather chair. Ethan sat. His legs felt weak. Eleanor remained standing. She moved to the window and stared out at the garden. "Evelyn was the youngest," Eleanor said. "Our family, the Hart family, has money. A lot of it. My father built a pharmaceutical empire. When he died, I inherited the company. Evelyn was supposed to inherit a portion as well, but she never wanted any of it. She hated the life we lived, the scrutiny, the expectations, the control." Eleanor's voice was flat, detached, like she was reciting facts about a stranger. "When she was 22, she fell in love with someone," Eleanor continued. "Someone our mother disapproved of, a working-class man. Nothing wrong with him, but he wasn't from our world. My mother forbade the relationship. She threatened to cut Evelyn off completely. There were arguments, screaming matches, and then one night, Evelyn was just gone. She left a note. It said she couldn't live as a puppet anymore, that she was sorry." Eleanor turned to face Ethan. Her eyes were wet, but her expression was hard. "I thought she was selfish," Eleanor said. "I thought she threw away everything we had because she wanted to play at being normal. I was angry at her for years, but I never stopped looking, because she was still my sister." Ethan's hands were clenched in his lap. His knuckles were white. "Anna never told me any of this," he said. "She said she didn't have family. She said she grew up in foster care. I believed her." Eleanor's expression softened slightly. "She was protecting you," she said quietly. "If she told you the truth, my family would have found her. Found you, and they would have made your life hell." "Your family," Ethan repeated. "You mean they would have come after us?" "My mother would have," Eleanor said. "She's dead now, passed 2 years ago. But yes, she would have done everything in her power to separate you. She viewed Evelyn, Anna, as a runaway asset, not a daughter, just something that belonged to the Hart name." Ethan felt sick. Anna had lived her entire life with him under a false identity. She had cut herself off from everything she knew, and she had done it for him, for their life together. "I have a son," Ethan said suddenly. "Lucas. He's 6 years old." Eleanor's expression changed. Something cracked in her carefully controlled face. "You have a son," she repeated softly. "Evelyn had a child." "He looks just like her," Ethan said. His voice broke. Same eyes, same smile. He's all I have left of her. Eleanor crossed the room and sat down heavily in the chair across from him. She covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. I thought she was alive somewhere, Eleanor said through her fingers. I thought maybe one day she would come home, or at least call. Send a letter, something. But she's gone. She's really gone. Ethan stared at his hands. He thought about Anna, about the way she used to hum while she cooked dinner, the way she always made sure Lucas's favorite stuffed bear was tucked in beside him at night, the way she smiled when Ethan came home from work, even though they were always struggling to pay rent. She had given up everything for that life, for him, and he had never known. I need to go, Ethan said. He stood abruptly. I need to pick up my son from school. Eleanor looked up. Her face was blotchy and red. Wait, she said. Please, I need... She stopped, took a breath. Can we talk again? I need to understand. I need to know what her life was like, what kind of person she became. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct told him to run, to get Lucas and lock the door and pretend this had never happened. But he looked at Eleanor's face and saw his own grief reflected back at him. I'll think about it, he said. He walked out of the Hart mansion and climbed into his delivery van. His hands shook as he started the engine. He drove in silence toward Lucas's school. His mind was a roar of white noise. Anna, Evelyn, his wife, a stranger. He didn't know who he had been married to anymore. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his bed with their wedding album open in his lap. The photos showed Anna in a simple white dress, no family on her side, just a few friends she had made at the diner where she worked. He had thought it was sad at the time. Now, he understood it was deliberate. He traced his finger over her face in one of the photos. The smile was the same as in the portrait, the birthmark on her cheek, the way her eyes tilted slightly upward at the outer corners. He looked for differences and found none. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from his supervisor asking if he could take extra shifts this weekend. Ethan stared at the message without reading it. His mind was somewhere else entirely. Lucas appeared in the doorway in his pajamas, his hair stuck up on one side. Daddy? Why are you awake? Ethan closed the album quickly and set it aside. Just thinking, buddy. Come here. Lucas climbed onto the bed and curled into Ethan's side. He smelled like the lavender soap Anna used to buy. Ethan had kept buying it after she died because it made the apartment feel less empty. Are you sad about Mommy again? Lucas asked quietly. Ethan wrapped his arm around his son. Yeah, he admitted. A little bit. Me too, Lucas said. I wish I could remember her better. Ethan's chest tightened. Lucas had only been 3 when Anna died. His memories of her were already starting to fade. Soon, all he would have were the stories Ethan told him and the photos around the apartment. She loved you very much, Ethan said. More than anything in the world. I know, Lucas said. He yawned. Can I sleep here tonight? Sure. Lucas was asleep within minutes. Ethan stayed awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the woman he had married, the woman who had apparently erased herself to be with him. The next morning, after dropping Lucas at school, Ethan sat in his van and pulled out his phone. He stared at Eleanor's business card. She had pressed it into his hand before he left the mansion. Her personal number was written on the back in neat handwriting. He didn't want to believe Eleanor. He wanted to think it was all some bizarre mistake. But the portrait didn't lie. And neither did the timeline. Anna had appeared in his life 10 years ago with no past and no family. She had been 22 then. If she was really Evelyn Hart, she would have been running for 4 years by that point. Ethan dialed the number before he could change his mind. Eleanor answered on the second ring. This is Eleanor. It's Ethan Cole, he said. His voice was rough. From yesterday. There was a brief silence on the other end. Then Eleanor spoke carefully. "Thank you for calling. I wasn't sure if you would." "I need to know if you're telling the truth," Ethan said bluntly. "Not because I think Anna lied to me. I know she had her reasons. But I need to be sure before I let myself believe that she gave up everything for me." "I understand," Eleanor said quietly. "What do you need?" "A DNA test," Ethan said, "between you and my son. If Anna was really your sister, then Lucas would be your nephew. The test would show it." Eleanor didn't hesitate. "Yes, of course. Whatever you need. I can arrange for a lab to come to you. Somewhere private. You won't have to bring Lucas to the mansion if you don't want to." "Okay," Ethan said. He felt something loosen slightly in his chest. "Okay." "Ethan," Eleanor said. Her voice was gentler now. "I know this is difficult. I'm not trying to take anything from you. I just want to understand what happened to my sister. And if Lucas is my nephew," she stopped, "I would like to know him, if you're willing." Ethan closed his eyes. "Let's start with the test," he said. The lab technician came to Ethan's apartment 3 days later. She was professional and quick. She swabbed Lucas's cheek while he sat at the kitchen table eating cereal. He thought it was a game. When she left, she said the results would take 5 to 7 business days. Ethan went through the motions of living. He picked up shifts. He made meals. He helped Lucas with his homework. But his mind was elsewhere. At night, he pulled out boxes of Anna's things. Old clothes, books, a jewelry box with cheap earrings, and a necklace he had bought her for their first anniversary. Everything was ordinary. Nothing suggested wealth or privilege. On the 4th day, his phone rang. It was Eleanor. "I hope I'm not bothering you," she said. "I just wanted to ask, how is Lucas doing?" Ethan frowned. He was sitting in his van between deliveries. "He's fine." "Why?" "I just wondered if he likes to read, or if he has hobbies. I know it's strange to ask, but—" Eleanor's voice wavered slightly. "He's the only connection I have to Evelyn now. I'd like to know about him, if that's all right." Ethan felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. Eleanor sounded lost. "He likes dinosaurs," Ethan said. "And space. He's obsessed with planets right now. Keeps asking me questions I don't know the answers to." Eleanor gave a soft laugh. Evelyn was like that. She asked questions constantly. Drove our tutors crazy. They talked for another 10 minutes. It was easier than Ethan expected. When he hung up, he realized he was smiling slightly. Then he felt guilty for it. 2 days later, a package arrived at his apartment. It was addressed to Lucas. Inside were 3 picture books about space and a stuffed toy of a triceratops. There was a note in elegant handwriting. "For Lucas. I thought he might enjoy these." Eleanor Lucas was thrilled. He carried the triceratops everywhere for the next 2 days. When Ethan texted Eleanor to say thank you, she responded immediately. It wasn't pleasure. Evelyn loved dinosaurs too when she was young. The DNA results arrived on the 7th day. Ethan picked up the envelope from his mailbox and sat in his van with the engine off. His hands shook as he opened it. The technical language was dense, but the conclusion was clear. The tested individuals share a biological relationship consistent with that of aunt and nephew. Probability of relationship, 99.9%. Ethan sat in silence. The paper trembled in his hands. It was real. All of it was real. Anna had been Evelyn Hart. She had run from wealth and family and her entire identity. She had become someone else entirely. And she had died without ever telling him the truth. He called Eleanor. She answered immediately. "The results came," he said. "And?" Her voice was tight with tension. "Lucas is your nephew." Eleanor made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh. Ethan couldn't tell. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for telling me." "I'm coming to see you," Ethan said. "Tonight." I need answers. Real ones this time. About who she was, why she ran. Everything. Yes, Eleanor said. Yes. Come whenever you're ready. Ethan dropped Lucas at his neighbor's apartment. Mrs. Wilson, a retired teacher who sometimes babysat, agreed to watch him for a few hours. Then Ethan drove to the Hart mansion. This time, the security guard at the gate waved him through without questions. Eleanor met him at the door. She looked different than she had during their first meeting. Her hair was down. She wore jeans and a sweater instead of the severe business suit. She looked tired and human. "Come in," she said. She led him to the same sitting room as before. This time, the coffee table was covered with photo albums. Eleanor gestured for him to sit. "I pulled these out after you called," she said. "I haven't looked at them in years. But I thought you might want to see who Evelyn was." Before. Ethan sat down. Eleanor opened the first album. The photos showed two young girls. One was clearly Eleanor, maybe 10 or 11 years old. The other was younger, maybe 6 or 7. She had Anna's face. "That's Evelyn," Eleanor said softly. She pointed to the younger girl. She was always smiling, always laughing. She made everything feel lighter. Ethan stared at the photo. Anna had laughed like that too. It was one of the things he had loved most about her. Even when money was tight and the rent was late, she found reasons to smile. Eleanor turned the pages slowly. The photos showed birthday parties in grand ballrooms, family portraits in front of the mansion, Evelyn at dance recitals and piano performances. In every photo, she was dressed perfectly. Her hair was styled, her posture was straight. But as she got older, the smile began to look strained. "Our father was very controlling," Eleanor said. Her voice was flat again. "He believed children were investments. We were homeschooled by the best tutors money could buy. We weren't allowed to have friends outside of approved social circles. Everything we did was scheduled, monitored. Our mother was worse after he died. She was terrified of scandal, terrified of losing control." She turned another page. Teenage Evelyn stared out from the photo. She wasn't smiling anymore. "When Evelyn was 20, she started sneaking out," Eleanor continued. "I covered for her, told our mother she was at the library or meeting with her tutor. I didn't know where she really went. She wouldn't tell me. I think she was afraid I'd try to stop her." "She met me," Ethan said quietly. "I was making deliveries to a coffee shop near downtown. She came in one day and we started talking. I thought she was a college student. She never corrected me." Eleanor nodded slowly. She must have been so relieved to be with someone who didn't know the Hart name, who didn't want anything from her. "I loved her," Ethan said. His voice cracked. "I loved her for who she was, not for her money or her family. Just her." "I know," Eleanor said. "That's why she ran. When my mother found out about you, she threatened to destroy your life. She said she would make sure you never worked again, that you would be arrested on false charges if you didn't leave Evelyn alone. Evelyn heard her on the phone making the arrangements." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. "She never told me any of this. Because she knew you would try to fight it," Eleanor said. "And you would have lost. My mother had resources you couldn't imagine. So Evelyn left everything behind. She withdrew all the cash she could access from her trust fund, about $50,000, and disappeared. I came home one day and she was just gone. There was a note. It said she was sorry, that she couldn't live in a cage anymore." Eleanor's voice broke. She closed the album and looked at Ethan with wet eyes. "I was so angry," she whispered. "I thought she abandoned me. I thought she was selfish and ungrateful. I didn't understand that she was suffocating, that she was choosing freedom over everything else. It took me years to stop being angry. And by then, I couldn't find her. She was just gone." Ethan wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. He thought about Anna working double shifts at the diner, saving every penny so they could afford a real wedding, moving into their tiny apartment and decorating it with furniture from thrift stores. She had done it all without complaint. She had been happy. "She told me once that she had everything she ever wanted," Ethan said. His voice shook. "I thought she was just being kind, but maybe she meant it." "She did," Eleanor said. "I'm sure she did." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Eleanor spoke again. "I'd like to know what her life was like with you, if you're willing to tell me. I want to understand who she became." Ethan nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "But I need something too. I need to see everything you have from her missing years. Photos, records, anything. I need to understand the person she used to be." "Of course," Eleanor said. Over the next few weeks, they met regularly, sometimes at the mansion, sometimes at a neutral coffee shop. Eleanor showed Ethan old videos of Evelyn playing piano, letters she had written as a teenager, report cards from her tutors. Ethan told Eleanor about Anna's job at the diner, the way she sang while doing dishes, how she cried during sappy movies and insisted they were happy tears. Lucas started asking about Eleanor. He called her his aunt now. Eleanor brought him books and toys each time she visited. She knelt down to his level when she talked to him. She listened carefully when he rambled about dinosaurs. One afternoon, Lucas hugged her goodbye, and Eleanor froze. Then she wrapped her arms around him and cried quietly into his hair. Ethan watched them and felt something shift in his chest, something warm and unsettling. One evening, Eleanor came to the apartment with a small wooden box. Her hands were shaking as she set it on the kitchen table. "I found this in storage," she said. "It's Evelyn's, from her bedroom. My mother boxed everything up after she disappeared. I couldn't look at it before. But I think you should see it." Ethan opened the box. Inside were trinkets and papers, a dried flower, a movie ticket stub, a bracelet made of cheap beads, and at the bottom a small leather journal. Eleanor picked it up carefully and opened it. The handwriting inside was Anna's. Ethan recognized it immediately. "It's her diary," Eleanor whispered. She flipped through the pages. She wrote in it up until a few months before she disappeared. They sat side by side on the couch and read together. The entries were brief. Most were complaints about tutors or her mother's demands. But toward the end, the tone changed. There were entries about sneaking out, about meeting someone who made her laugh, about feeling alive for the first time. Then Eleanor turned to the last page. It was dated 2 weeks before Evelyn vanished. The entry was longer than the others. "I met him again today. Ethan. He doesn't know who I am. He just sees me. The real me. Not the Hart name. Not the money. Just me. I think I could love him. I think I already do. But I'm terrified. If my family finds out, they'll destroy him. I can't let that happen. I have to choose. And I think I already know what I'm going to choose." Ethan's vision blurred. He couldn't breathe. Eleanor was crying beside him. "She chose you," Eleanor whispered. "She chose you over everything." Ethan stood abruptly. He couldn't sit anymore. He paced to the window and stared out at the street. Eleanor stayed on the couch, clutching the journal. "I should have protected her better," Ethan said. His voice was raw. "I should have known something was wrong. She was so careful about everything, so private. I should have asked more questions." "She didn't want you to ask," Eleanor said gently. "She wanted you to just love her. And you did." Ethan turned around. Eleanor was looking at him with an expression he couldn't name, something soft and sad and understanding. Their eyes met and held. The room felt too small suddenly, too warm. Ethan crossed back to the couch. He sat down beside Eleanor, closer than before. She didn't move away. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for showing me this, for helping me understand." "I should be thanking you," Eleanor said. "You gave her a life she wanted. You gave her happiness. And you gave her Lucas." They were very close now. Ethan could see the flecks of gold in Eleanor's eyes. She smelled like lavender. Like Anna. His heart was pounding. Eleanor's hand moved slightly. Her fingers brushed against his. Neither of them pulled away. Then Ethan leaned forward. Eleanor's breath caught. Their faces were inches apart. He could feel the warmth of her skin. Her lips parted slightly. And then Ethan jerked backward, like he had been burned. He stood up so fast he knocked the coffee table. The journal fell to the floor. "I can't," he said. His voice was strangled. "I can't do this." "Anna," Eleanor covered her face with her hands. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. She was my sister. You were her husband. This is wrong," Ethan finished. "This is wrong." They stared at each other in horror. The air between them felt poisonous now. "I should go," Ethan said. "Yes," Eleanor said. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "I think that's best." Ethan grabbed his jacket and walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the knob. "I need some time," he said without turning around. "To think about all of this." "I understand," Eleanor said. Her voice was barely audible. Ethan left. He sat in his van in the parking lot for 20 minutes, with his head against the steering wheel. His whole body was shaking. He had almost kissed his dead wife's sister. He had wanted to. For a moment, he had forgotten everything except the warmth in Eleanor's eyes and the way she understood his grief. He felt like he had betrayed Anna all over again. Ethan didn't call Eleanor for 3 weeks. He didn't answer when she called him either. The first few times, he stared at her name on his phone screen until it went to voicemail. After that, she stopped trying. He told himself it was better this way. Cleaner. He had Lucas to focus on, work to do, bills to pay. He didn't need complications. He didn't need to think about the way Eleanor's eyes had looked in the dim light of his apartment, or the way his heart had jumped when their hands touched. He especially didn't need to think about how much he wanted to see her again. Lucas was the one who broke first. "Why doesn't Aunt Eleanor come over anymore?" he asked one night at dinner. He pushed his macaroni around his plate without eating. "Did I do something wrong?" Ethan's chest tightened. "No, buddy. You didn't do anything wrong." "Then why?" Lucas looked up at him with Anna's eyes. "I miss her." Ethan set down his fork. He didn't have an answer that would make sense to a 6-year-old. He barely understood it himself. "She's just busy," Ethan said. "With work." Lucas frowned. He was smart enough to know that wasn't the whole truth, but he didn't push. He just went back to his dinner in silence. That night, after Lucas was asleep, Ethan pulled out his phone. He scrolled through his messages. Eleanor had sent 3 texts in the first week. Each one was brief and careful. "I'm sorry about what happened. I hope you're okay. Please let me know if you need anything. Tell Lucas I said hello. After that, nothing." Ethan stared at the screen for a long time. Then he set the phone down without responding, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. When he made deliveries, he found himself driving past the Hart mansion. He never stopped, just slowed down slightly and glanced at the gates before moving on. At night, he dreamed about Anna, except sometimes in the dreams, Anna would turn around, and it would be Eleanor instead. He would wake up sweating and guilty. Eleanor wasn't doing any better. She spent long hours at her office, burying herself in work. She attended board meetings and reviewed contracts and signed documents, but her mind was elsewhere. At night, she sat in the sitting room where she and Ethan had almost kissed. She stared at Evelyn's portrait and tried to understand what she was feeling. She had loved her sister. She still did. The grief of losing Evelyn had been the defining pain of her adult life, and now she had found her sister's husband and child. She should have been grateful, relieved, happy to have this connection to Evelyn. Instead, she was falling in love with Ethan, and she hated herself for it. She tried to convince herself it was just shared grief or loneliness. She had been alone for so long. Maybe she was just desperate for connection. But that didn't explain the way her heart lifted when she thought about him, or the way she remembered exactly how his voice sounded when he talked about Anna. One evening, she opened Evelyn's journal again. She read through the entries slowly. Then she stopped on the last page, the one where Evelyn had written about choosing love over everything else. Eleanor traced her finger over the words. "What would you want?" "Em," she whispered to the empty room, "what would you want me to do?" The portrait on the wall stared back at her in silence. The 4th week arrived. It was a Sunday morning. Ethan woke early. Lucas was still asleep. The apartment was quiet. Ethan sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and realized he didn't want to be alone anymore. He got dressed, woke Lucas gently. They ate breakfast in silence. Then Ethan said something he hadn't planned. "Do you want to go visit Mommy today?" Lucas's face lit up. "Really?" "Really." They drove to the cemetery on the edge of town. It was a small place, modest. The headstones were simple granite markers. Anna's was near a maple tree. Ethan had picked the spot because she always loved trees. They parked and walked across the grass. Lucas ran ahead. He knew the way. When they reached the grave, Lucas was already kneeling in front of the headstone. He touched the engraved letters of Anna's name carefully. "Hi, Mommy," he said softly. "I brought Daddy." Ethan knelt beside him. He put his hand on Lucas's shoulder. "Hey, Anna," he said. His voice was rough. "It's been a while." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ethan heard footsteps behind them. He turned. His heart stopped. Eleanor was walking across the grass toward them. She wore jeans and a plain sweater. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. She stopped when she saw them. Her face went pale. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't know you'd be here." "I can leave." "No," Ethan said. He stood up. "Don't." Eleanor looked at him, then at Lucas, then at the headstone. She walked forward slowly. When she reached them, she knelt down on the other side of the grave. "Hi, Em," she whispered. Her voice shook. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come. I didn't know where you were. And when I found out," she stopped. Tears ran down her face. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry you had to run. I'm sorry you died thinking I was angry with you." Lucas watched her with wide eyes. He reached out and took Eleanor's hand. She gripped it tightly. "I miss you," Eleanor said. "I miss you so much. And I found Ethan. And Lucas. They're wonderful. You were so happy with them. I can see it in every story Ethan tells me. You chose well, Em. You chose so well." She wiped her eyes with her free hand. Then she looked at Ethan across the grave. "I came here to ask you something," Eleanor said to the headstone. Her voice steadied slightly. "I came to ask if you'd be angry with me, because She stopped, started again. "Because I have feelings for Ethan, and I don't know if that's wrong. If I'm betraying you, I need to know if you'd hate me for it." Ethan's breath caught. Lucas looked between them, confused, but quiet. Eleanor looked at Ethan directly now. "I've been miserable without you," she said. "Both of you. I know what almost happened was, I know it was complicated, but I can't stop thinking about it, about you, about Lucas, about the life Evelyn had with you. And I keep wondering if maybe," she stopped. "I keep wondering if maybe she'd want us to be happy, together." Ethan knelt back down. He stared at Anna's name carved into the stone. "I've been thinking about it too," he admitted. "Every day, every night. I feel guilty every time, like I'm betraying her memory. But then I think about what she wrote in that journal, about choosing love, about choosing to be happy even when it was hard. He looked up at Eleanor. Anna would have wanted me to move on eventually. She said that in one of her letters. I found it after she died. She wrote that if anything happened to her, she wanted me to find someone else, to give Lucas a family. I never thought I could. But then I met you, and you're not just someone else. You're her sister. You understand her in ways no one else could. You love Lucas because he's part of her. Eleanor was crying openly now. I love him because he's part of you too, she said. They stared at each other across Anna's grave. The morning sun filtered through the maple leaves above them. Birds sang somewhere in the distance. The world felt very still. I don't know if this is right, Ethan said quietly, but I know Anna would want us to live. Really live. Not just survive. She would, Eleanor agreed. She ran away from everything so she could live the life she wanted. She'd want the same for us. Lucas spoke up suddenly. Mommy's not mad, he said. Both adults looked at him. He smiled. She's happy. I can feel it. Eleanor let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. She reached across the grave and took Ethan's hand. He let her. They sat like that for a long moment. 3 people connected by love and loss, and the ghost of a woman who had chosen freedom. Eventually, they stood. Eleanor picked up Lucas and held him. He wrapped his arms around her neck. Ethan stood beside them. They looked at the headstone together. Thank you, Ethan said softly, for everything, for loving me, for giving me Lucas, for being brave enough to run. Thank you for being happy, Eleanor added. For finding what you wanted, for showing me that it's possible. They walked away from the grave together. Lucas was still in Eleanor's arms. Ethan walked beside them. When they reached the parking lot, Eleanor sat Lucas down. The boy immediately grabbed both their hands. Can Aunt Eleanor come to lunch? He asked hopefully. Ethan looked at Eleanor. She looked back at him. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The question hung in the air between them. Then Eleanor said carefully, Only if your dad thinks that's okay. Ethan thought about Anna, about the way she used to laugh, the way she always insisted on feeding people, the way she believed in second chances and new beginnings. He thought about the last words in her journal, about choosing love. I think, Ethan said slowly, that would be okay. Lucas cheered. Eleanor smiled. It was the first real smile Ethan had seen on her face in weeks. But, Ethan added, looking at Eleanor, we should probably start slow, as friends, get to know each other better. Without all the, he gestured vaguely, without all the complicated parts. Eleanor nodded. Friends, she agreed. I can do friends. Good, Ethan said. He smiled slightly. Because Lucas has been asking about you nonstop, and I'm running out of excuses. Eleanor laughed. It was a soft sound, fragile but genuine. I've missed him too, she said. Then she looked at Ethan. Both of you. They stood in the parking lot in the morning sun. Lucas swung their joined hands back and forth. Above them, the maple leaves rustled in the breeze. Somewhere nearby, a car door closed. Life continued around them, normal and ordinary, and beautiful. So, Eleanor said. Lunch? Yeah, Ethan said. Lunch. They walked to their cars. Lucas climbed into Ethan's van. Eleanor got into her own car. As Ethan started the engine, he glanced in the rearview mirror at the cemetery behind them. He couldn't see Anna's grave from here, but he felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like permission, like peace. Daddy? Lucas said from the back seat. Yeah, buddy. I think Mommy's happy we found Aunt Eleanor. Ethan looked at his son in the mirror. Lucas was smiling, completely certain. "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "I think so too." He pulled out of the parking lot. Eleanor's car followed behind them. They drove toward lunch, toward whatever came next. Not as lovers, not yet. Maybe not ever. But as two people who had both loved Anna, who both carried pieces of her with them. Who were learning to live again. The road stretched out ahead. The sun was bright. And for the first time in 3 weeks, Ethan felt like he could breathe. Behind them, in the quiet cemetery, a breeze moved through the maple tree. The leaves whispered against each other. And if you believed in such things, if you believed that love could outlast death, you might have said it sounded like laughter. Like someone was finally at peace.